most of what we think we know today is not historically accurate. When you go back and actually read from their own writings, you realize that even though these weren't perfect people, they were people seeking to be used by God. John Adams wrote, "Posterity, you will never know how much it cost my generation to preserve your freedom." He said, "I hope you make good use of it, or I shall repent in heaven that I ever took half of the pains we did to create it." Modern history emphasized what should have been the least significant moments, and they removed what was the entire point of why we did this in the first place.
Well, if you're enjoying Table Talk, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Remember to click that notification bell to stay up to date on all of our latest posts.
So what can history teach us about God's plan for America? Our guest today is helping raise up a generation of believers who know their Bibles and their history, and he's here to share from his new book, The American Story, Rebuilding the Republic. But before we get to that, join me around as a student at the table. April Simons, are you ready to learn today?
I am ready to learn, and I'm so excited. We live in a great country.
We do.
There's so much great about it, so I'm excited for this show.
You know, I know you travel a lot abroad.
I do.
But, and we love that. I mean, we love every country.
Yes.
But when you come back home, I mean, you realize how blessed you are, don't
Oh,
you?
my goodness. It's just good stuff right here.
Yeah,
we
for
need to be
sure.
grateful for what we have.
That's right. Cindy Johnston, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing wonderful today.
Good.
Happy to be here and be able to talk about our history in this country and how God has been such a part of this whole process. And I'm thankful to be living in this country.
Yeah. Well, I know that my daughter, Rachel Lamb Brown, loves history.
I do.
This is going to be right down your alley.
And Dad loved history, and he passed along that love for history to me. And I love to see there's like this revival of this love for country here in America. And it's really cool. I just saw Target. They're actually doing this like full-on like American display, patriotic display. And so I just love seeing like this renewal of just love for country.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Dorothy Newton, how are you?
I'm doing great.
You know, a lot of the history that's being taught in our schools today is not accurate, and a lot of stuff's being left out. Things have been changed. To have a real historian today to talk about that has legitimate documents,
Yes.
I think it's going to be good.
Yes, I think it's going to be great. And you know what? I'm always open to learn more and more. And it's just it's a beautiful thing.
It really is. Cindy Murdoch, are you ready?
I am so
Student over
ready.
there.
I am. And you know, I was thinking that it's a shame that we as Americans don't really study the history of this country to keep rekindling the love for this country. And I was just thinking at Christmas, we bought little constitutions, a little booklet, and we stuck it in all of our adult children's stocking, hoping that they might just get back in there and be rekindled and be refreshed and understand
Yeah,
Constitution.
that's neat.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, you know, he is an author, speaker, and president of Wall Builders. Please welcome our dear friend, Tim Barton. I called you a historian.
I'll take it.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. Your dad, David Barton, and you have these like photographic memories.
Isn't it like copy paste? It's like a little like younger version.
It's like Google.
The 2.0.
yeah.
It's amazing. Like you'll see when he starts telling stories. But you guys really have one of the greatest libraries of historical documents. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am. It's the only collection. We have actually two museums in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We have one just west of Fort Worth in Aledo. We have one in Las Colinas. But the one in Aledo, which is where our main location for Wall Builders is, we have on display the only place in America you can go and see documents from every single signer of the Declaration and every signer of the Constitution.
Wow.
The only other people that have those collections are places like the Smithsonian, the Library of Congress, or National Archive. And we've been blessed. We have tens of thousands of original documents. So any president, any founding father you can name, we have some of their handwritten documents.
So I know this is going to be difficult, but out of all the documents that you have looked at, what is one that really touched your heart and stood out as far as maybe looking at our founding fathers, Constitution, whatever?
We have a Geneva Bible that The Pilgrims came to America in 1620. The Geneva Bible was part of the Bible of the Reformation when the Bible hadn't been available to the modern world in their language. And so when the Geneva Bible comes out, for example, in English for people in England and Western Europe, this is a revolutionary thing. And when the Pilgrims come to America, they come with the Geneva Bible. Well, John Winthrop is the one who leads the Puritans in 1630. There's 1,000 Puritans that come initially with him, and this is where he gives the famous sermon about America being a city on a hill. We have a Bible from one of the families that came with John Winthrop. And in the front of the Bible, it actually has their family genealogy and quill pen. The Bible's from 1590.
Wow.
And so that's just ones off the top of my head.
Of course, you've written these books, The American Story. There's 1 and 2, and this is just like a must-have for understanding America, the story of America. Just quickly tell about both of these, because I know people will want to get that and share with their children, their grandchildren, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, the American Story of the Beginnings, we go from Columbus through the Declaration, and we actually in both books have more than 1,000 footnotes in the back of them because we're trying to tell the honest story, and so we use original documents to do it. And in using those documents, we encourage people, please don't take our word for this. Like, here's the actual letter where this is what he wrote. But what we try to point out to people is that most of what we think we know today is not historically accurate for lots of reasons. Yeah. And when you go back and actually read from their own writings, you realize that even though these weren't perfect people, they were people that by and large not only knew there was a God, they were people seeking to be used by God for a greater purpose, for their future legacies, future generation for America. The second book goes from the Constitutional Convention up through the first 7 presidents. So my dad and I are working. We're going to have a series of 4 or 5 of these that kind of tell all of the American story. So these are the first 2 installments, chronological order. But it goes Columbus through the first 7 presidents.
And you tell a lot of the actual stories, like you said, with the footnotes to back up, because truth is so important. Yeah. And I'm going to let everybody go around because I know everybody wants to ask a history question. But what would our founding fathers say about the state of America today?
Yeah. I think they would lament. One of the things that John Adams wrote is if we ever come to the place that we lose the foundation, he says, posterity, you will never know how much it cost my generation to preserve your freedom. He said, I hope you make good use of it, or I shall repent in heaven that I ever took half of the pains we did to create it. And so I think they would look and go, what are y'all doing? But because we don't know our history, we don't recognize that the founding fathers are the ones who worked so hard to make sure we had a faith foundation. They quoted the Bible more than any other book in their writings, and it's not even close. The Bible was the most important book, and so in education, the Bible was the #1 textbook that kids learned to read with. When you went to university, you were required to be trilingual no matter what university you went to. Wow. You had to know English for maybe obvious reasons in America. You had to know Latin because you would read all the classics in Latin, but then you had to know Greek because every university, your freshman project was to translate a portion of the Greek Septuagint into English, so you had to know Greek. Well, this was just part of basic American education. You have to know the Bible. That's where you're learning to read from. It was a tradition that nearly every American in their time, the founding fathers wrote about this often for themselves, standard practice was they would read through the Bible at least once a year.
Well, and our government was set up in the branches based on
Isaiah.
The government that they studied in the Bible.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
Correct.
So talk just a little bit about that.
So when you look, for example, the Constitution, there's so many elements and components of the Constitution that come directly from the ideas they learned from the Bible. The fact that we have a Republican form of government, they recognize that a king was never God's idea. I mean, when they're leaving Europe, right? And they can point to where Samuel says, this is a terrible idea. Well, they say, well, what did God do before there were kings?
It never worked. I mean,
no.
Through the all of history in the Old Testament,
And so the question was, what did God do before there were kings? Well, Exodus 18:21, choose from among you people to represent you, leaders of tens, 50s, hundreds, thousands. Well, it repeats it in Deuteronomy 1, repeats it in Deuteronomy 16. And so you go to the Constitution, and there are so many components, including the separation of powers, where George Washington, John Adams, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton all wrote the reason we have to have a separation of powers is because the heart of man is wicked and deceitful. It can't be trusted, so we can't centralize. And by the way, that's a quote from Jeremiah 17:9, that the heart of man is wicked and deceitful. It can't be trusted. And they actually didn't put the verse reference by it. There's a great letter from Benjamin Franklin over, when he was over in Europe, he wrote back to a pastor in America. He said, when I'm over here, He said, if I quote the Bible and if I don't tell them what I'm quoting, this is as foreign to them as if I'm speaking a different language. He says, in America, I can quote the Bible and I never need a reference that I'm quoting it because everybody in America knows the Bible. Well, this is what in their writings when they say the heart of man is wicked and deceitful. They didn't put Jeremiah 17:9, but it's a verbatim quote. But the reason it mattered, they said we have to separate powers because if we know the heart of man is wicked and deceitful, then if we centralize power, when somebody's heart's wicked and deceitful, we're like, what are we going to do? Well, now we separate power. So that when somebody's heart's wicked and deceitful, and even the reason we have the three branches, right? If you had a Supreme Court that was bad, well, then you have Congress and the president to keep them accountable. If you have a president that's bad, you have Supreme Court and Congress to keep them accountable.
Accountability.
That was it. Because they know we can't trust the heart of man solely in and of itself. But this, again, and actually in the book, Building a Republic and the American Story of the Beginnings, we go through some of this from their own writings. At the moment when they write it, because it goes chronological, we will include part of that letter. And it's also worth noting when we tell those stories, most history today is one of people's least favorite subjects because it's names and dates and places, right? It's dates and dead people. Nobody wants to do that. But it's interesting.
It's kind of like reading Leviticus or...
Right, it's numbers, and so-and-so begat so-and-so, and I don't even know. But what we try to do is take more of a Bible approach, not from the Leviticus or the number side, but if we all talked about the story of King David, when David kills Goliath, if that was in a modern school setting, the question would be, in what year did David kill Goliath? And none of us Bible lovers at this table could answer that question.
You're right.
Why? Because the Bible doesn't tell us. Well, why didn't... Because that's not the point of the story. Modern history emphasized what should have been the least significant moments. And they removed what was the entire point of why we did this in the first place. So this goes back, and it actually tells far more of the story, not just names, dates, and dead people, but it tells the story, which makes it a much more fun read.
Which I love, by the way.
There's a very common misconception when it comes to talking about the separation of church and state. Can you clarify what the founding fathers meant when they put that? Because a lot of people say the church should not be involved in politics. True or false?
So that is entirely false. But what we've done in modern culture, because we know so little history, we have taken a phrase and confused it, that the founding fathers believed in a separation of church and state, but not the way we do. They believed in separate institutions, but not secular institutions, right? I mean, the Old Testament teaches us this. Moses was in charge of the law and government. Aaron was in charge of the tabernacle, the temple, the church. Well, those were separate institutions, but God was over both of them. God gave Moses all the law. God gave Aaron all the instructions, right? I mean, through Moses, but God is the one that gives all those instructions. In fact, if you go to King Uzziah in Chronicles 26, he was the one that God gave inventions of war. He was coming back one day after a victory. He goes by the temple. He wants to offer incense. And the priest meets him and says, King, like, you can't go in there. I will do it for you. And he says, I'm the king. Like, what is wrong with you? I do what I want. And if you remember, when King Uzziah enters the temple, God struck him with leprosy. He turned and fled a leper. God had just given him victory in war. God was not against King Uzziah, but God made very clear boundaries. There's a separation of institutions. The founding fathers knew that very well because they had seen over in Europe where there was a state-controlled church that the king would actually determine the laws and theology for the church.
And create new institutions.
Correct.
And they said, line up with what he wanted to do.
That was it. So they said, in America, we're not going to do it. But they never thought there was a secular notion of government. And this is where the very first time the founding fathers met, as an example, September 6, 1774, the very first motion made at their very first meeting was to open with prayer. And they discussed it. They brought in the Reverend Jacob Duché. The opening prayer lasted for 2 hours.
Wow.
By record. Now, most churches would have a hard time having a 2-hour prayer meeting these days, right? But these are the founding fathers. And we can go through hundreds of examples. By 1814, there'd been more than, or excuse me, 1815, there'd been more than 1,400 official government-issued prayer proclamations where governors, presidents, or Congress called on the nation or their individual states to times of prayer and fasting or prayer and thanksgiving. If the notion we're hearing of separation of church and state means you can't have God in government, then why did every single founding father who became a governor do prayer proclamations calling on a specific day in their state for a time of prayer and fasting or a specific day for a time of prayer and thanksgiving? Either they misunderstood the phrase or we've misunderstood the phrase. And since they're the ones who did the Constitution, I'm going to think they didn't misunderstand it. we've just misrepresented that today. They believed in separate institutions, but not secular institutions.
And of course, a lot of people reference the letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote. So explain that.
Yeah, so in January 1st, 1802, Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter to a group of Baptists in Danbury, Connecticut. Thomas Jefferson was the one, when he was in Virginia, he had worked to remove the Anglican Church as the official state-established church of Virginia, which had gone all the way back to Jamestown's founding, because that's what England was under King Henry VIII. They became Anglican, and so Virginia was officially an Anglican colony, and Jefferson said that we should not give favoritism toward the Anglicans over everybody else. We should have freedom of religion for all Christian people. So he was the one that worked to remove the Anglican Church over Virginia. Well, the Danbury Baptists knew that, and being up in Connecticut where they were, Connecticut was very strong Congregationalist, which was Puritan Pilgrim descendants. That was kind of their thought. And they were concerned that John Adams had just been president. He was a very outspoken leader supported by the Congregationalists. And they said, if we get another guy like that, they might say, we're all gonna have to be Congregationalists in America. So Jefferson's president, they said, this is the guy we need. Can you make sure, in their letter, they write in October of 1801, they say, can you make sure that you do something to ensure our religious freedom? And the letter he writes back, January 1st, 1802, he says, you don't need to worry about losing this. He says, Congress has already made sure that your freedom is forever secure, because in the First Amendment, which says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, he says, we've erected an eternal wall of separation between church and state to make sure the government can never interfere with your religious expression.
So the government cannot interfere, but they switched it and said the church, can't.
Right, now we're saying that we can't have religion and government, but here's where I would go even one further, and maybe kind of to your thought a minute ago too. Thomas Jefferson, January 1st, 1802 was a Friday. 2 days later, Sunday, Jefferson doesn't just go to church, he goes to church in the U.S. Capitol building, a church that he actually approved to meet in the Capitol building. And the pastor who spoke that Sunday was the pastor that Thomas Jefferson had personally invited, John Leland. So if Jefferson admit with separation of church and state that you can't have religion and government, then why did he go to church at the Capitol building and listen to the pastor that he personally invited to come speak on that Sunday?
So good, so good.
I would have enjoyed history and Leviticus more if I knew it this way. But I know you have kids, 3 and 6, I believe, and I have grandkids, and I know they are not going to learn this in school. Do you have something for them that we could be teaching them? Any material?
Yes, ma'am. So at wallbuilders.com, we do have resources and material for younger kids. We actually have some coloring books with some stories in it. Awesome. But even with these 2 books, The American Story, we have them written where even homeschool parents can use them in upper elementary. They can be used in middle school or high school, depending on when you want to cover some of these materials. But it's also written in such a way, one of the things that unfortunately most parents don't realize how poor their education has been either.
Exactly.
And so I would encourage, most parents, go back and relearn this. Because just like it used to be growing up where Sunday school, where there'd be maybe storyboard, right? And we're learning David killing Goliath, foam board, whatever it is. So I would say one of the things that's so important is for parents to learn the story so that then they can help tell the story at an age-appropriate level. There's some parts that even in the book, we have a little disclaimer at the beginning, there's a few moments where we talk about cannibalism in America and some could be intense moments for kids. Parents, just be cautioned, these sections, you might want to read it first. But that's what we would say is there's a lot of great resources on our website, but also even these books for parents to know, so then they can even walk their kids through reading and telling some of these stories to relearn who some of those heroes were.
Right. How and why have these facts not been brought forth over the years into public schools and into society in general? How has that started just going away?
With education, there's a long history we can back up with progressives. When they took over in the early 1900s, they changed the goal of education. Ultimately, what they did is they stopped creating thinkers, and they started producing memorized and repeaters. And so most people now have not learned the stories because it doesn't help support what the point of education has become. And going back to what education used to be, we wanted people to be thinkers, problem solvers, and know the story, and we've just shifted the idea in modern education.
What are some victories today that's happening in America that gives hope
Yeah.
Well, I think there's actually a lot happening right now. And unfortunately, a lot of news networks aren't covering them. But we are seeing incredible victories from the pro-life battlefield where states are doing things to protect and defend life. But even things like the 10 Commandments being now at Texas, where we are, one of the states that's actually passed the 10 Commandments are going to go back in every public school classroom in Texas. The same thing with In God We Trust legislation. There's legislation that's allowed chaplains. There's more than 20 states that now have chaplains in schools in their states, and that list is growing. There's a law now passed in Texas where Bible and prayer time is allowed every day for every teacher and every student. There's a lot of really positive things. When we look at what made America a unique, special, prosperous nation, the foundation that made us different was the Bible, and the Bible has been actively removed for the last 60 years, but we're at a place now that we can restore that, and we are seeing it restored in real time, which is pretty amazing.
Wow, amazing. You know, Wall Builders was trying to get some ads out, and it was rejected.
Yeah.
So tell us about that, and then what can all of us do in a way to help support and make it happen?
So we were in Washington, D.C., where there are the Smithsonian Museum. So many school kids go. We want to take out ads and put them on buses in various places, in even the metro stations, where people could see. Basically, there was a QR code is all we were doing. There was a picture of George Washington kneeling in prayer, and it had the word Christian with a question mark. There was a QR code, like, to find out more, go here. And we had an article where we just had quotes from founding fathers and had a little disclaimer up front that even though not every founding father we wouldn't argue was a devout Christian, most of them were, and here's just some of the things they said about their faith. And so then we have this long list. Well, in Washington, D.C., they said, wait a second, you can't have religious advertising in D.C., and that's too politically controversial. And so our friends, Kelly Shackleton for First Liberty, they represented us. We were able to win that case. And so then our ads actually did run in Washington, D.C., where they were on buses, they were in the metro stations, where people could actually just go on that QR code and see what do the founding fathers actually say. And when you go to their writings, it's so different than what most of us have been taught about their belief.
Cool. I'm curious, because you mentioned this at the beginning of the program. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that are being taught that are history that actually aren't accurate, that people would be surprised to find out?
Yes, that there's not a single signer of the Declaration or Constitution that was an atheist, agnostic, or a deist. Which we hear today, well, you know, Franklin, Washington, they were all deists. None of them were deists.
Or they said Jefferson saying.
Right. Now I might look at like a Franklin, and I wouldn't argue he was a Christian, but he's the same guy who during the Constitutional Convention, when it's all falling apart, the longest speech he gave was challenging all of the other delegates there to a time of prayer. He said, if God doesn't help us, we'll never succeed. Well, that's not an atheist, agnostic, or deist. Now, he wasn't sure about the divinity of Jesus at the end of his life, so I wouldn't say he's a Christian, but he wasn't anti-Christian ever his whole life, or the idea the founding fathers were all these racist, bigoted slaveholders. The vast majority of the founding fathers actually came out against slavery, and many of them never had slaves. Many of them who had slaves actually freed their slaves in their lifetime, but we're not told their stories. We're told about, well, like Thomas Jefferson, he had slaves. Washington had slaves. Cool, you've named 2 of more than 200 founding fathers. Who else do you know that had slaves, and what's their story? And the problem is we don't know the story. We hear the accusations, and because we don't know the story, we often believe the accusations, even though largely they're historically ungrounded. And so part of what we do, going back and telling the story, people can see not just what the accusation was, but what did they actually do, and how it's so different than what they're accused of today.
So some of the best presidents that America has had, and some of the worst presidents as it relates to what our founding fathers intended.
Yeah, so for the original intent, for the Foundation Constitution, obviously George Washington, he's the guy that started it all. He helped do the Constitution. He was one of the best. You could point to people like Abraham Lincoln, who had the courage and backbone, significant moment in American history. We'd point to someone like a Calvin Coolidge, who's considered one of the most constitutional presidents in our nation's history. Maybe even a guy like Ronald Reagan, who, when, you know, an era we were told America's going downhill, never gonna recover, and it turns around. I'd even point to Donald Trump. With all of the criticism he gets, he is one of the most constitutionally grounded presidents we've seen in our lifetime.
Wow.
I mean, and not even close. So I would say that's probably my top 5. Andrew Jackson actually is in my worst presidents because of what he fundamentally did to change America. And then you have guys like an FDR because of bringing in progressivism. There's several people I would point to.
So Roosevelt.
Correct, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, for fundamentally changing what the American system was about and saying, no, federal government should be the one to meet all your needs. It used to be we knew God met our needs.
Did his wife have a lot of influence on him, though?
Correct.
So that
the same with Woodrow Wilson, a very bad president. His wife was very influential. Maybe even like a Joe Biden, whose wife was very influential.
Yeah. So the damage that we've seen from some of these presidents, it's interesting. It's almost like you can go back and read about the kings. You have a good king, a bad king, you go backwards, you go forward.
Yeah.
But are you hopeful for what you're seeing happen now, some of the doors that are open, even our Supreme Court decisions?
I'm very hopeful for lots of reasons. We're seeing God on the move all over the nation. We have the opportunity. We do a lot of traveling on a yearly basis, and it's so evident. I mean, we've seen and talked about even on your program before, like the baptisms in California, right? 7,700 people baptized. Well, there was baptisms in Atlanta just a couple weeks later where they did 1,600 baptisms in Atlanta.
Yeah.
We're seeing God on the move all over the nation. We actually have a president who loves America and one who recognizes that not only is there a God, but God saved him on purpose for a reason.
Yeah.
It's been a while since we've had a president even acknowledge something that simple. And so there's a lot of reasons I'm very hopeful.
Well, and we have to say, because we're out of time, but when you talk about men that God has used, he always uses imperfect people.
Yes.
And so we can talk about King David, a man after God's own heart, but he murdered a man, he committed adultery. I mean, we can...
President Trump would fit in Hebrews 11 very well. Because that was an incredibly flawed list of murderers, prostitutes, womanizers.
It was a flawed list.
Right.
Yeah.
But look how God used them in amazing ways.
Yeah, and God can do that, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Hebrews 11 should be one of the most hopeful chapters we ever read, because we should go, if God can use them, he can use me.
Yes. You have Rahab in there, who was a prostitute.
Correct.
You know, think about that. It is in the lineage of Jesus. So anyway, this is good, right?
Yes.
So good, so good. Well, we're out of time today. But I want you to remember, we're not just called to learn from history. We're called to make history with God. And I've heard people say that history is his story. And our founding fathers, of course, like our founding fathers, we need to stand up, speak truth, and lead in this moment. You need to get out and be a part of your community, your school board. I mean, how important is that?
So important.
To get involved in what's going on with our schools and with our children and with the world. And I mean, so many things happening. God's giving you an opportunity to speak up and to speak truth. And I want to just say, like, as believers, be kind, okay? We don't have to be ugly and mean and angry. And we, you know, God loves everyone. And we love everyone. And today, if you're watching and you need prayer, that's why that prayer line number's on the screen. If you're watching today and you don't know the Lord, but you would like to know him, I would just encourage you to call that number on the screen and just invite Jesus into your heart right now. Just say, Jesus, I need you. I always talk about my grandpa Trammell, who just said, God, if you're there, I need you. He didn't know what to pray. He just said, God, I need you. And God transformed his life. He wants to do that for you too. The most important prayer you can pray is to invite Jesus into your heart and ask him to forgive you, because the Bible says all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. All of us sitting at this table have sinned and come short, and we have all prayed and asked Jesus to come into our hearts, and he has changed our lives. He wants to do that for you. Well, I do want to thank Tim for joining us. To get a copy of his book, both these books, find out more about his ministry. This is such a great thing for kids, y'all. Visit wallbuilders.com, both 1 and 2. There will be a 3 and 4 coming out. And the stories, that's what interests me. I don't know about y'all, but I love to read. And these are stories that are backed up by documents. So as always, make sure to follow us on social media. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel for full episodes and exclusive content. Let us know how Table Talk is touching your life. We love hearing from you. You can also listen to the Joni Table Talk podcast, available now on all major platforms. I want to thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Tim.
Yes, ma'am.
We love and appreciate your little photographic memory there. And just excited about what you're doing and the truth that you're sharing, these stories that actually happened that we can know and understand. And I know you've been blessed by it as well. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, ladies. See you next time. Bye-bye for today. Well, you know, there's always more to the story. If today's conversation stirred something in your heart, don't let it end here. Click on the next video to keep growing in faith and truth. And if you haven't yet subscribed, turn on the bell so you never miss a moment. Let's keep pressing in together.